Welcome to Women in the Music Industry, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in an industry that has long been dominated by men. I'm your host, Rob Wells, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this empowering journey. Each episode of this podcast will be dedicated to exploring the inspiring stories, accomplishments, and struggles of the extraordinary women who have defied the odds and made waves in the music business. Together, we'll delve into the journeys of female artists, songwriters, producers, musicians, managers, executives, and all those who have helped play a pivotal role behind the scenes. We'll uncover the stories that deserve to be heard, as well as celebrate the triumphs, challenges, and unique perspectives that women bring to the music industry. Whether you're a fan of music, an aspiring artist, or simply curious about the inner workings of the music business, this podcast will offer a valuable perspective. Together, we'll celebrate the power of music and the strength of these inspiring women. So join us as we amplify their voices and together pave the way for a future where women in the music business are no longer the exception, but the rule. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Songwriter's Piano, an easy-to-use app for songwriters and lyricists to use when coming up with song ideas when there's no instrument around or nobody to play one. With the Songwriter's Piano, one can easily play commonly used pop songwriting chord sequences at the touch of a screen, in any key, in 3 different chord variations, all played on a gorgeously recorded grand piano. Download the Songwriter's Piano by Play Like Me apps today, found on both iOS and Android stores everywhere. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Women in the Music Industry. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. My guest today is the one and only Nina Woodford. Yay! Hi, Nina. Hello.
Hi.
Nina is a Swedish-American songwriter, originally from Stockholm. Nina is the daughter of Swedish music producer Sten Sandhall and American social anthropologist Prudence Woodford Berger. At the age of 16, she began her music career singing backing vocals for Swedish artists such as Eric Gadd, Titio, and the Navigators. She also featured on the Britney Spears album, Oops, I Did It Again. So cool. Got to hear all about that. By the age of 20, she had a publishing deal as a songwriter with Merlin Music in Stockholm. That's amazing, at the age of 20. At age 25, Nina moved to London, England, and wrote the European Hot 100 #1 smash hit, Broken Strings, by James Morrison from his album, Songs for You, Truths for Me. That song is the biggest single of Morrison's career. Amazing. In 2010, Nina won the Skop Prize, an award designated to Swedish pop music writers. Nina co-wrote the theme song for the 2019 Special Olympics held in Abu Dhabi, titled Right Where I'm Supposed to Be. And if that wasn't enough, Nina was tapped by Sesame Street in 2021 to compose a song honoring Juneteenth, a federal holiday in the United States commemorating the emancipation of African American slaves. Wow. And then to top that off, she has also written for Leona Lewis, Idina Menzel, Tom Jones, Sugababes, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, Christina Milian, The Saturdays, and Jay Sean. Today, she lives in Los Angeles and is married to the human being that is probably closest to me in DNA, my brother, record producer Greg Wells. Hi, sister-in-law. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It looks like you're in a church background, but of course I know that's not quite right because I know that pipe organ very well.
Yes, I'm in our home office, and Greg surprised me one day saying that he had bought a organ that a church wanted to get rid of. He was very excited, and he didn't know where to put it. He was trying to place it in front of windows in the dining room. It was weird. And then we were lucky enough, and it just fit kind of perfectly in this bookcase. We just took down some shelves. So
that's amazing. I mean,
there it is. He plays it sometimes.
We're better to have a pipe organ than right smack in the middle of your home office, right?
Exactly. It's a nice wake up sometimes.
Yes, it's better than bagpipes.
Phantom of the Opera happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So amazing. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I know your schedule is bananas at best, and it's hard to find the time together where we can make this happen. But
You did it.
yeah, it's cool for me too, because like I've known you for many years, but I don't know all about you. You know, I know quite a bit, but I'm hoping that today I can really understand your story and how you got from point A to point B. And, you know, you and I met a lot through music as well, and we've co-written songs as well. But I just love to go a little bit beyond the bio and just sort of go deep into the past and hear about your journey, if that's all right.
That's all right.
Cool. Okay, so take me back to your earliest days. You grew up with your dad being a music producer, and was music always around when you were quite young?
It was. I mean, he was a different kind of music producer. He produced indigenous music from indigenous peoples around the world. He actually curated one of the largest libraries, I think, in the world of music that was dying instruments that only were passed down from one generation to the next, from the father to the son to the son. And there was only one person in the world that could play this instrument, you know, and he documented it all and went to Vietnam and went to Ecuador and sat in a village and recorded choirs and Macedonia and different music in India. And so that's the kind of music producer he was.
Was that something that he was always doing, or did that sort of happen at some point in his life?
It happened late in his life. He studied until he was about 40, I think, and had this radio gig early in the morning. His other passion is Dixieland music and all jazz, but really he played the tuba in a Dixieland band and stuff. And he had this early morning radio show where he played jazz. And then around 40, he got this job with the Swedish government. They used to have a music label that they funded, and through that he got to record all these folk music albums.
That's incredible. There must have been some moment in his life though where he became quite passionate about this project. And did he always have an interest in world music?
Yeah, I think he was always really curious, and he always loved music, and he always loved kind of discovering new music. I know he traveled to India quite early on, and he loved people. So he always loved learning about things he didn't know, and we had very interesting dinners at our house often. There's this folk music festival in the north of Sweden, and he was part of organizing that. And he would always bring artists from all these countries, from Vietnam. I remember because the guy from Vietnam had this very long nail, and that's the way he played this kind of string instrument that I'd never seen before. And
how cool! Yeah. How cool to be raised in that and to see that and be surrounded by world music from a really young age. Yeah, it's
fantastic. It was great.
Did you ever get to travel with him to any of these destinations and see him in action?
I didn't. We talked about it, but it never worked with school and everything else.
Okay. So music is just surrounding you. You've got a lot of recordings and people that are in a musical environment for their work. Did you start playing any instruments at a young age yourself?
I did. I played piano for a few years, but I kind of made it a challenge to myself to not learn to read sheet music, but instead memorize everything, which, you know, took me to a certain point and not beyond. But I always sang. I've heard stories of me singing far before I can remember doing it. But if I was bored, I was singing. If I was excited, I was singing. I was basically always singing.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know your mother is from America, and she moved to Sweden. And did she give you any musical background at all? Was there any music from her side?
I mean, she wasn't in music, but she played music around the house. She played everything from, Aretha Franklin she used to clean to Van Halen's Jump.
Wow.
And then I had my two older siblings who had pretty different tastes from each other. So I was exposed to loads of different kinds of music, everything from like Pogues to Keith Jarrett to Bob Marley,
Yeah. Yeah.
would play in our house.
It's great having an older sibling with Greg, my brother, just listening to Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Rush, who I'm wearing his T-shirt right now. He was listening to a lot of Rush, but then also listening to a lot of jazz and very experimental music. Where uh, I was more into the pop side of things, but it was nice to hear all the stuff that was outside of
Everything.
pop. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have any opportunities to sing when you were young in public, or was it always just around the house?
Um, yeah, because I walked around singing uh, every now and again. I remember a friend of mine, her father he had this TV show. Oh, her grandfather had this TV show. Uh, I remember my 60s. First, I remember my 50s and then 60s. And he asked me if I wanted to sing Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny, Yellow Polka Dot Bikini
Yeah.
at 12. So there's footage of me doing that. And I was asked in school to sing at the, school graduation at 15. I think I sang Summertime. But I never liked standing like in front on the stage and have everyone look at me. That wasn't it was kind of uncomfortable for me. I loved singing. I loved singing on stage, sang in choirs. But I didn't pursue it, standing in the front.
Yes, yes, it's a whole different animal, isn't it?
Yeah,
Being right in the front, singing in front of people. Working behind the scenes is so much nicer. At least it is for me. I quite enjoy that instead of being right front and center on stage.
Yeah.
Did you have any recording equipment at home? I mean, how I'm so curious to know. Like from 15, you're singing at your school, and then at the age of 16, 1 year later, you're now singing for all of these different Swedish artists. How did that?
It was through my brother-in-law, actually. He heard me sing on that graduation. And, my sister, his partner, had been talking about me singing because he was a music producer. And he went, okay, yes, your sister's great, I bet. That's what everyone says. And then when he heard me sing Summertime, he went, okay, you've got something, would you like to come and sing some demos for me or do backing vocals? And I loved it. And I loved being in a studio environment. I loved recording and layering harmonies and finding them. And that's how it started. And then some people heard that, and I was asked to sing backing vocals with some Swedish artists that you mentioned. And other producers started asking me to come in and sing demos. And sometimes I'd hear like words where I felt, ooh, I think this could be better. And very humbly and gently, I kind of said, maybe you want to do this, or this harmony could be good. Maybe that's actually the melody, and kind of got in there a little bit. And at 17, my brother-in-law was walking me home because we had worked late, and that was the deal with my mom that he had to walk me home.
Right.
And he said, have you ever thought about being a songwriter? I think you'd be really good. And I didn't even know that was a job. I thought you were either a music producer or an artist. And between those two roles, music was created. I didn't know you could only be a songwriter because I knew I didn't want to be either of those. And he said, yeah, you can, that's a job. That's a legitimate job. You can. So I went home to my mom at 17 and went, Mom, I know what I want to be. I want to be a songwriter. And my mom, who's always very supportive, was just like, oh, my baby knows what she wants to be.
What was that based off? I mean, were you writing songs already? Were you writing poetry? Were you coming up with melodies on your own?
I was making up, I always made up melodies. I was making up little things on the piano. And I wasn't, I know some people who just were writing full on songs for ages before. And I wasn't really. I loved creating parts of songs, but I didn't, again, I don't know if I just didn't understand that I could even do that, like write a whole song. So I had maybe one or two songs that I'd written, finished. Yeah, I started writing with my brother-in-law was the first person who invited me to like a real session that felt very kind of serious.
So after you came home, told your mother that you wanted to be a songwriter and everyone's celebrating this, Was it straight into co-writing then at that point, or were you spending some time writing
Yeah.
songs by yourself, or
No, I started with him, which was a beautiful thing. He was so patient with me, and my first attempts were not very good. They're very funny to listen back to now. And I kind of learned how to write and, um, you know, how to get to the chorus and how all these parts fit together and how the whole and telling the story and all of that was through writing with him for a few years.
that's incredible, incredible.
Yeah.
I think, did we skip over the Britney Spears moment? Did that happen before this?
It happened in parallel to this. I think I wonder, I might have even been signed when that happened. I can't remember what year Oops, I Did It Again came out. But I was parallel to, in order to earn money, I was singing backing vocals and singing demos as a demo singer while also writing, or trying to write, learning to write. And I can't remember who asked me to be in that session. I think the person they used to use was out of town and they had a deadline and they're like, who else? Yes. So I'm singing backing vocals on, I can't remember if it's one or two songs, but it's definitely one called Don't Come Knocking on My Door.
Cool. That's
And
so cool.
yeah, it was amazing to see how they worked because it was very different from other studios I'd been in. It was very meticulous and they just sat on this one part until I got it, perfectly right. And they wanted me to sound like her. So they kept saying, make it younger, make it whispery until I really sound it, until I got to that place.
Wow.
And they had more parts than anyone I'd ever worked with. I think they stacked me, 8 times on each harmony, and it was crazy.
And very, like, just mathematically accurate, right? Like it just had to be right down
Yeah,
to the.
yeah, very precise. Like no kind of let's go with the feeling. It's just like they knew what they wanted, and they didn't want anything other than what they wanted.
Amazing, amazing. And did they have that already sort of pre-planned? Had somebody gone in and recorded temporary parts and just said replace these, or?
No, Rami Yakub was in that session. He's a great singer, and he just sang the parts to me exactly how we wanted them.
That's so great, so great.
Yeah,
So,
it was fun. It was really, really a good learning moment for me.
do you ever whip that out and tell your kids, "Hey, I was on a Britney Spears album"?
No, I actually forget from time to time until someone like you reminds me that happened.
That's really, really cool. Really cool. So, okay, you are co-writing with your brother-in-law. How many years did that end up happening until you started to branch out and starting to write with more people?
I don't think I really started writing with other people until I got signed to Merlin. I
Okay.
walked into Merlin. Someone I had sung demos for had set up the meeting because he'd heard some of my stuff, and I played my songs that I've done with my brother-in-law, my favorite songs that I thought were amazing. That were, there were moments in them. let's be kind and say that. But and I remember the publisher who I had the meeting with at the time. He said, yeah, I think there's something here. And I was like, something here? This is like the best thing ever. And then they put me together with people at Merlin and outside of Merlin. And that's kind of how it started.
That's incredible. So you are co-writing with people now at Merlin,
Yes.
and this is all just Swedish writers. Are you starting to do trips around the world, or you're just staying basically in
I
Stockholm?
started going to London, I think maybe the first time I was 22, like 2 years into my deal, or a year and a half into my deal.
What was that like going to London? Was that a completely different world to you?
It wasn't, I mean, I was so nervous because it felt so big. I think it was nice to have been eased in the way I was eased in. I started with someone I knew really well, my brother-in-law, who's one of my closest people. And then Merlin was this like in-house, all the studios were there. You see people, you get to know them. I hung out with them all the time. So I wasn't like thrown off the deep end. And then going to London just felt so intimidating. And then you realize that, you get into a room and sometimes it really works and everyone is kind of cohesive and sometimes it doesn't. And it works the same-ish. Um, but it took me a few trips to kind of relax and go, okay, I know this.
It's interesting. I learned how to highway drive in such an easy way, where it was just like, I grew up in a small town, Peterborough, and the highways there, there's nobody on the roads at all. So when I was learning how to drive and getting on the highway, it was just, very, very easy. You get to merge onto the lane and there's nobody there. And I remember the first time driving to Toronto by myself was just, it started with nobody there on the highway. And then finally, after 5 minutes, there's maybe one other person on the highway. And then eventually, 10 minutes after that, you got 5 people on there. And then it eventually just gets to be that you finally get to Toronto where there's 16 lanes of traffic and it's packed. And it's just, I almost feel like that's the way that you got into songwriting.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of way.
Yeah.
It's nice that way rather than just being thrown in the deep end right away.
Yeah, it suited me. I think I am a person who likes to be eased in. Some people thrive off of that kind of like, oh, here we go, and that's not me.
Wow. So you did a few trips to London and then eventually at the age of 25, you moved fully to London.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to move. And it was between LA, where I live now, and London. And I chose London because it was closer to home and because I'd had a few songs that had charted there in a way that I hadn't here. The doors were more open there too.
Did the James Morrison song, Broken Strings, did that happen after you moved to London or was it?
Yeah, years after.
Years after. Can you tell me a little bit about that song, how that came about?
That song came about, I first had a meeting with the A&R for James Morrison for his first album. He'd heard a few songs that he liked of mine. We had a meeting. I had time booked in with James, and then I got a call the week before and they said, we think we have the album and we don't need any more songs, so we're going to cancel the session, but we'll think about you for the next album. And I was like, okay, that's what they say. Right. But they did for the next album. And I got booked in, I think. Initially, I got booked in for a week. And, can I tell this story? I got booked in for a week. It was my week. I won't name any names, but I invited a huge songwriter that I wanted to work with. And I was hoping that the goodwill from him for inviting him into this session, because James was a big artist at this time, would have him invite me to future sessions with him. And I booked it through his manager, who was a friend of mine. And I had, I think, 3 days with him and 2 days with this other producer. And a few days before the session, the manager calls and goes, yeah, the songwriter is asking for work samples from you. I was like, what does he need work samples for? He went, well, he's not sure about this session. You're Swedish. He doesn't know if you're necessary in this session.
Wow.
In my session. I was like, okay. My manager said, just indulge him. He's tricky. So I sent some lyrics that I'd written. I sent some songs I liked. And he was like, no, thank you. And I lost my own session because it was at a studio he had booked. And not only did I lose the session, he then demanded from James, because they hadn't finished a song, to get an extra day. So I ended up with 1 day with James after having this week that was supposed to be mine.
That's horrible, horrible.
It was crazy. It was so crazy. But it was kind of nice because that day we wrote 2 songs, like really rough demos of 2 songs. And one of them was Broken Strings, which at the time was this kind of mid-tempo, guitar-y, almost rocky song. Da, 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 da. It's like a different song.
Right.
And I played it for the A&R at the time, Colin Barlow, who dismissed one of the songs, and the other song he went with broken strings. He went, I love this chorus, but I think it's a ballad, and I think maybe it's a duet. And he gave us 2 more days to finish it.
Wow.
So we went in and rewrote the verses. Oh yeah, maybe I should say that too. Before my this week was half stolen from me, I was walking to my accountant one day, and as I've done since I was a kid, I was singing because I was walking, and I always sing when I walk because it gets you there faster.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about my session with James, my upcoming session, and I was thinking about what I know about him, and I didn't know very much. I know he plays guitar, so I was thinking if there were any cool kind of guitar references I could make. And then I came up with this broken strings idea, and what could that mean? Broken strings, well, you can't play them, and you can't feel. You might want to be able to play, or you might want to feel something towards someone, but if it's broken, if your heart's been broken, it's very hard to get back, you know? And that's, people ask me often if I come up with lyrics first or melody first, and it differs. But at this time, I came up with that whole chorus, I think apart from one line, and recorded it on my little recorder at the time. Mm-hmm. So I had walked in to the session with that, which helped.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we turned it into a more ballady thing. It was with Fraser and with James. Mm-hmm. And James came up with this beautiful that was his melody. It was gorgeous. And yeah, that's how it came about. And then they were trying to get someone to sing it with him, and it had to time with people's other albums, and the record labels had to agree, and there were some promising names, and they fell through. And for a while, it looked like the song wouldn't be able to be made because they couldn't get anyone. And then, lo and behold, Nelly Furtado said yes, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. And it still wasn't slated to be a single. I think they released 2 or 3 songs before. And then as a final push, they released this song, and it did what it did.
It just completely took off and became his biggest single, right?
Yeah.
Of his whole career. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty crazy. And it was, I think it was the second most played song on radio that year in the UK. So we were nominated for an Ivor, where I met the songwriter who had kicked me out of my own session. And I was like, I had this recorded. I had the chorus to walk into your session with.
It could have been you. Yeah. But it's not.
I mean, in a way, it probably wouldn't have. It would have turned into a different song. So I guess, sometimes things happen the way they're supposed to.
It's incredible, isn't it? It could have gone completely the other way. Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe you would have written a song that never went on his record. Who knows? Exactly. Well, what's that like to have the second biggest played song in the country? Like, it's just, were you hearing it nonstop everywhere where you turned? Was it just around the corner?
I was hearing it a lot, but it's so surreal. It's so weird for me to think about people outside of where I am hearing things that I'm not hearing, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I'd sit in a cab and hear it, and I'd have to go, I wrote this. But it still felt like maybe it was just playing in that cab.
Right.
But yeah, oh my gosh, it was fantastic. And you know what? The loveliest part was like going on YouTube, and I had this experience with the Leona Lewis song too, and reading what the song meant to people, to individual people. Because that's why I love writing. I love connecting with people, and I know what different songs have meant to me and how different songs have carried me through different parts of my life, and to have someone say, oh, this song, got me through the worst breakup ever, or we played this song, it was my father's favorite song, we played it at his funeral, whatever. It's just, that's bigger to me than having the second most played song, actually.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to pay your bills with songwriting, but
Yes.
the nicest part of this whole game is just when somebody stops you and tells you that something that you made, something that came from your brain, your life, your story, whatever, it just helped them in so many different ways.
I had the craziest thing happen, I have to tell you.
Tell me.
It's so nuts. I was at a dinner here in LA, and I write very differently now than I used to. And here in LA, in the States, I've hardly had a career that people know of because most of my songs were released and charted in Europe. So I always feel a bit kind of sheepish about my career here for some reason. And I was at this dinner, and people had been very purposely invited to this dinner. And I was there with Greg, and the guy who was hosting the dinner was going around the table introducing people. And there were people who had been wrongfully incarcerated at this dinner, who had done time, and then who he had helped get out, get exonerated. I was sitting next to this woman who had a little baby, and she's one of the people who was wrongly incarcerated for I don't know how long. It was awful. And
Wow.
the host was going around the table introducing everyone and telling people about something about them, why they were there. And, and he was, Greg, and he told his whole career. And then he came to me and he's like, Nina, tell us something. And I went, oh, I'm just here. I'm just a wife. And he went, no, come on, stop. Like you've done, she wrote for Leona Lewis and you've done some stuff. And the woman next to me turned and went, you wrote for Leona Lewis, And the song I wrote was very meaningful. It was about Leona's cousin who had suddenly passed away. And it's called Yesterday. And it's about how you can always hold on to the things that you had, even though you don't get to experience more things with this person. But it wasn't a single. It was far back on the album. They were talking about it as a single and then they just never released it. And she turned around to me and she said, don't tell me you wrote, and people do this to me all the time. Don't tell me you wrote Bleeding Love. And I'm like, no, yeah, I cannot tell you I wrote Bleeding Love because I did not. So I was preparing and she went, don't tell me you wrote Yesterday.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's the one song I did write. yes, I wrote that. I co-wrote that. And she was like, I play that song every day while incarcerated. People asked me to stop playing it because I was just blasting it. It gave me such strength. I arranged dances around it. I just couldn't believe. And then I thought, I was so disappointed for years that it wasn't a single. And then I went, if she was the only person who heard it and it helped her through this unimaginable time, it was such a crazy coincidence that I was sitting next to her.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
She was right there beside you, and that happened to be the one song that got her through her time of being wrongfully convicted for something. That
was nuts. And it did remind me of like where I always want to come from when creating any art, just this place of wanting to connect with even one person, wanting to say words that might help even one person.
I heard somebody say, write your song thinking that the song has the potential to make $1 million. And because it can. And I mean, that is one way to look at your song, so that you put a lot of importance into it. But I really love looking at every song that I'm writing, that it has the potential to actually get out there and help somebody.
Yes.
And how can you craft something that will have that ability, that power? Can you write a song that ends up being the thing that gets somebody through the darkest time of their life?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting because I think it's hard to go into any creative profession thinking that you're going to get rich. One, because I think very few do. And I think you have to make art because you have to, because you love it and because you have this thing in you that you want to bring out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And two, I just think that you're hampering yourself if I've heard that too. I've been in studios where people want to play me something that's coming out and they're like, you're listening to my new house here, you know? And to me, it's just, it would be very hard creatively to come from a place of hope. How is this going to make money for me? Or how is this going to be, you know, then I think you're cheating yourself out of the chasing a muse or the truest expression of, you know, what this song could be or mean, the emotional value of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time, like, try to chase your heart instead of chasing the charts, you know, and write the songs that really just matter to you and really feel like they're telling your story, or you feel like you're helping somebody by writing this. And I find that those service songs are always better than the selfish songs, you know, where you're just like, you are writing a song that has the potential to get out there and help somebody out. The money's a byproduct, you know, like if you start doing that and it starts becoming world known, you know, that people are listening to these songs because they're helping, then, you know, eventually the money does come in through royalties because people are listening to it. But I think if your mandate is I want to be rich, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think you got to have the mandate of just, I want to write songs that mean something to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think what makes, you know, there are so many songs that also sound kind of the same, or you wouldn't be able to tell, you know, sometimes even who even the artist is, because it just feels like this very formulaic. And I think, and I've come to this pretty late in life. I didn't start out feeling like this, but I really do now. And that's, you know, your voice can only come through if you're writing with your heart and not for the charts.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what makes you unique. That's how why would someone want to work with you? Because you have your voice, because you have your truth and your way of expressing yourself. And if you're trying to copy something, then, you know.
I love the message that you had in the James Morrison song that you brought in. When you brought that lyric in, when you brought that chorus pretty much already done, what was the reaction when you first brought it in and played it for everybody? They must have just been jaw on the floor.
I mean, I think it was, you know, a shaky voice note where I was walking. You can't play unbroken, you know, and they went, oh, okay, yeah, let's go with that. But it wasn't this, oh my gosh. Okay. I don't think we knew, even when we loved it when we turned it into this ballad. We were really proud of it. But I have so many songs I'm so proud of that never got cut.
Yeah.
My gauge is not, you know, some people are really in tune with what's happening musically, and I don't think I am. I just think, you know, I loved it, but I didn't know. I don't think any of us knew what it would do.
And tell me, how much did your world change as soon as that song went crazy? I mean, you were probably getting in sessions with, I can see your credits right here. It just looks like everything just completely exploded after that.
Yeah, I was invited to a lot of great rooms. But I also was invited to a lot of great rooms that weren't for me. And I said yes because they were big artists or big writers, because my manager felt like that was a good place for me. And, you know, I felt like I should just be grateful to be there. And, you know, it's something that your brother has actually always lived by and taught me, is that I think I wasted a lot of time not listening to my heart and turning down some rooms that weren't a good fit for me. I don't really like this music. I'm not going to write a song that is inspired and that comes from me. I'm just going to try to not fail in this room. You know, that's not a great place. So I think I was in big rooms, and some of them worked out and a lot of them didn't, because I wasn't really feeling it, but I thought I should say yes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Speaking about songs that are inspiring and changing people's worlds, changing people's lives, you got to write the theme song for the 2019 Special Olympics in Abu Dhabi. That's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah, that felt really meaningful.
Can you take me through the story of that? How that came to be?
Oh my gosh, how did that come to be? Well, that was Greg who was first asked, and then he asked me and Ryan Tedder to join him. And we watched a bunch from previous Paralympics, and it's just so inspiring, you know. And we, I think we got to the message we wanted to give pretty fast. We wrote the song over 2 days, 2 separate days.
What was the reaction when you handed it in?
They were really happy. They were really, really happy. And then to see it performed, we were invited, we couldn't go, but to see it performed, the filming of it, the recording of it was huge. And it was amazing because I actually thought about my dad. I think there were 3 languages or 4 languages in there. Yeah, it's very cool.
How amazing. These are the moments that, I mean, I just don't know where you get these kind of moments in many careers.
No, you're right. And I've been really lucky because between that and the Juneteenth song that I wrote for Sesame Street.
We can't just glance over that. I got to hear all about that too, because that's just, most of us grew up watching Sesame Street and being inspired by all the great songs that were on there as well, the original songs. And you end up being asked to write a song, not just for Sesame Street, but for Juneteenth as well. Like something that is so meaningful and something that really, it's such an incredible thing. Like, again, just like the moments that you just can't get in any other career.
No,
Can you take me through what was that like?
It was, I think that was one of the biggest moments in my songwriting career, to be asked and to then hear it and see it and have Elmo like sing words and melody that I wrote. I was like in tears. Elmo. Yeah. That also kind of came out, the chorus came out really fast with a melody and a lyric. But it was an interesting process because Sesame Street has all these different divisions that have to give their stamp of approval for any lyric that passes through. You know, they have the kind of pedagogy division, and then they have the racial equality, equity division. And so I think I rewrote the lyrics 4 or 5 times. And, I walked into some pretty common mistakes, apparently, that people do when writing for Sesame Street. They were like, oh, you can't make Elmo the conduit for learning. Like, he can't be like, oh, now I know about Juneteenth. We want him to be a real, like, I think he's 3 years old or something. He's just there to have fun. He can be supportive, but I don't want him to like have big realizations, because that's not his, that wasn't out. And I think at some point I had a lyric about hanging out, and they were like, let's not do hanging in a Juneteenth song about abolishing slavery.
Wow.
I was like, you got a point.
Very much.
But yeah, we got there.
Did you get to go on set of Sesame Street at all?
No. They sent me shooting footage as they were shooting. It was crazy. But yeah.
That's incredible. That's these moments. I feel like I've got goosebumps just all over my body right now. Just hearing these stories. That's incredible moments in your life. You also won the Scop Award as well. Tell me about that. Like, was this after the James Morrison experience, or
it was after it was released, and I think I got it because I was one of the higher earners that year of Swedish songwriters. Yeah, but that was beautiful. And it was right before my dad passed away, so it was nice for me. He was less enthusiastic about my career choice than my mom. But I think it was nice for me that that award happened and he could see that, like, oh, things are going well for her. She's going to be okay.
Yes. Was he at the award show
He
himself?
was, and he couldn't come. I invited him, and he was just not in a good way. My mom came. She was my date.
How great. How great. Uh, what sort of things are you working on now? What is your life like now? I know that you've got a whole bunch of different things happening all at once, but how much are you songwriting still? How much are you writing more for TV? Are you writing more for special events? Writing for pop artists? How's it working?
I'm writing less for pop artists. I did write a whole album with this French artist who I've known for years and had a #1 with in France many, many years ago now. We finished an album just now, which is fun to do over Zoom. But yeah, I kind of do a lot of different things. I wrote a theme song for a kids show, which I loved doing. So much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Called Work It Out Wombats on PBS, and I've actually been learning to write scripts, like feature film and TV show scripts. And I had this idea, and I wrote a pilot, and it's partly music based. So I wrote a song with Greg and another songwriter called For Us for the pilot, which I'm super proud of, and it's really fun. I've realized, I love songwriting. I love music. And equally, I love storytelling. So I think it's also fun at this age to find other modes of storytelling. Mm-hmm. Writing a script and writing that kind of story and that length with a more character driven thing than a song is, it's same but different.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting how all the different arts kind of relate to each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And taking time out of music to do something different. Like I love to dive into photography. I love diving into doing music video direction and stuff like that. It's just, I find that when I do that, it gets me really excited to head back to music. And I've got tons of ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, so important, whatever kind of creative thing you do or non-creative thing you do, to just consume art in all forms. If you're watching movies or reading books or going to a museum or photography, all of it informs everything, all other things.
One will inform the other and just make it that much stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And give you different perspectives. Because I feel, as a songwriter, I definitely got stuck at one point where you feel like you're never surprising yourself or going outside of a thing that's expected, that you expect of yourself. I always know what I'm going to do, or I have places where I go. And then if you just like broaden your horizon a little bit, all of a sudden you have other influence. It's like listening to different types of music too. Mm-hmm. We'll do that. If you're a pop writer and you're only listening to pop music, I think it's going to be very hard to go anywhere else.
Let me ask you, is learning the pipe organ behind you, is that in your future at all? Do you have any interest in learning how to play multiple keys at the same time with the foot pedals? I mean, it's there. It's right there.
I would do it only to shock Greg.
Right.
Only so one day he could come in and I would be like,
That'd be amazing. Okay. Nina, I just have one last question for you. There's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that are thinking about getting into one sort of music career or another. They're beginning to realize that there's a lot of different avenues for a music career. It isn't just singing up on the stage. It's a lot of things that are behind the scenes. Do you have any advice for anybody who is thinking of getting into a music career?
The good news is it's never been easier to find ways to record yourself and learn about songwriting through podcasts like these, or tutorials and things. And I think starting is a good idea start recording yourself, start playing, even if you feel like the important thing isn't to be fantastic off the bat. The important thing is or think that it's even going to be a career. If you love it, you should do it just because you love it, and it makes it easier to find people who also love it, who you can play with, literally play like kids play. Maybe you don't sing, but you play something. Find someone who sings and you can have fun together, and you can teach each other and inspire each other, And I think also everyone has stories to tell. Everyone knows these base human emotions that all songs kind of come from, whether it's fear or love or fury or pain, we all experience them. And I think listen to loads of different music, but in all that, ask yourself what you want to say or what memories you have or a story you want to tell, and kind of start there. I have this quote that I love that I remind myself of often, because it's good to copy things to learn, just like Van Gogh did or Picasso did, but then you have your unique thing, and that's what makes you special, and it's valid and it's valuable. So the quote is from Martha Graham, who is hailed as the mother of modern dance. I won't read the whole thing, but half of it goes like this. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You don't even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. That's it.
Wow. So true. Powerful words.
It is. And I think the most important thing in any art form is the doing and the feeling. If you feel it and you do it, that's it. Start there.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Oh, I love it. I love it. I could hear that again and again and again, that passage that you just read. It's very, very powerful words. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your time. Thank you, Nina. This has been great. I've learned so much just in the past little hour that we've had here. It's been great. So many things that I didn't know, and I thought that I knew a lot about you already, but we will continue the conversation later over family get-togethers and dinners and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. From the bottom of my heart, it means a lot that you came on to this podcast. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Stay tuned for the next episode of Women in the Music Industry, coming soon. Let's embark on this incredible journey together, celebrating the women who are reshaping the music business one note at a time. If you enjoyed hearing this podcast, please take a moment and give it a like, a rating, or a follow. Your support helps immensely. We'll see you next time.